Welcome to Jesus is the Deep End. We're so grateful you're joining us as we explore the stories and testimonies of life within the body of Christ at Edgewater Christian Fellowship. Together, we'll hear how God is moving in our church, our community, and in the lives of His people.
Welcome to another episode of Jesus is the Deep End. I'm Nathaniel Duarte. Thanks so much for tuning in. And one of the things we want to do on this podcast is to highlight the ministries and organizations that have come from Edgewater. And today we are doing just that. Joining me today is Constance Bradley. She is the director of Road Christian Academy. And Hansen, a member of the Board of Governors, also from Road Christian Academy. And that school is a partner of Edgewater. Constance and Austin, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I'm excited to talk about RCA and Christian education. So I thought we should start with a little bit of the story of RCA, and if you could share how it came to be and kind of the origins of that.
Sure. So back in 2020, when education had a spotlight shown upon it, we found that there was a huge need for more school options for families. And at the time, I was running with one of my really good friends, Brianna. We were running Tribe, which is a homeschool co-op. And we had a flood of families through 2020 that ended up coming to us and homeschooling, not what they wanted to do, but because of the situation, ended up homeschooling. And they were looking for really full-time school options. And at that time, because there were so many people fleeing from the public education sector, our private schools here locally were full and had waiting lists. And through that and many other things that kept coming in during that season, there was this request to start a school. And at the time, I thought, absolutely not. There's no way. I was being a real estate agent, had a team of 8 people that I was working with, and got asked to start a school, and I laughed. And then, lo and behold, just a few months later, the Lord was so clear in the path that was really a need for our community in a way that I could serve. And another member here in the church had said, hey, I really think that you should do this. I think this is something that we're being called to. And through lots of prayer and consideration, we started the school just out of a need to serve our community and the members here at Edgewater. Specifically, we were looking to serve them, but really it's a community-wide. And as that vision back in 2021 continued to grow, we actually opened our doors in 2023. And through that process of developing what has become RCA, we saw even outside of the body of Edgewater that our community here in Josephine County really needed another educational option due to other private schools being full, and also because people want variety and different types of education. And so we were able to fill that need.
Okay, so I'm just kind of curious, and we're going to get into it as we talk about what makes a Christian education, a classical education, unique to other forms of education. But what's that process look like for starting a Christian school?
Hard.
I bet.
And a lot of work.
Yes.
I don't know anybody who has actually started a school from the ground up. And I have had the pleasure of meeting people across the country and just going to different conferences and getting on Zoom calls. And I actually am a part of a network that we meet on Thursdays on Zoom, and a lot of them are administrators and people who have known people who have started schools. So I've gleaned a ton of information, but that process looks like networking a lot and seeing what the people who have gone before me have done, learning from things that have worked for them and things that have not worked from them. And then, of course, with the huge team that we have that has built this thing, a lot of them have their own educational journeys and paths that they've been able to bring light to the table of what has been successful for them. And so gathering all of that information and then starting to implement it. And just by the Lord's grace, He has provided people who actually are either experts in the areas that we saw, like these are things we definitely want for RCA, or He has brought in people that are just saying, I'm here to serve, and has supported those people who have been really the forerunners to make those things that make RCA RCA, and what makes that different, where those pieces of education where we're saying we want these things for our next generation or for these kids. And we've had not only experts in those areas, even all the way down to starting cross country this past year. We thought, we can have kids go out and run around the block, right? We can figure this out. And as the Lord would have it, dropped in our hands our cross country coach, who happens to be the renowned in Southern Oregon coach to go to for running. And that's how RCA has been since the beginning, is the Lord just keeps blessing us with the people and opening and closing doors of what he wants. And we really believe that we're walking in that path. And so to answer your question, to start the school and what does it take, I think it's really just faith and bowing down to what the Lord has said yes and no to.
Yeah. So on your website, I went and dug through the website in preparation for this, but Christian and classical education combined is what RCA is offering. A question for both of you. Let's talk a little bit about, let's break it into two and start with the Christian education. What sets apart the Christian education aspect that RCA offers from other educational programs?
So God, that is the separation there, is that in everything that we do in a Christian education comes from a perspective and a worldview of a biblical perspective. So God's word and what he has given to us by his creation and what he is doing in his kingdom. All of that is the foundation and what we lean into and what we look back to. So when you're talking about Christian education, we're still doing reading, writing, and arithmetic. So those things, for the most part, you can find in all schools, right? There's going to be some level of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those are the core four that everybody who is in the educational sector are going to be looking at. For Christian education, you have those things, but they're rooted in, why do we write? Why do we do math? Why do we read? Well, God has given his written word, so he sees that as valuable, right? So communicating in that way, he's already told us, because that's the way he communicated to us through writing. Creation and order, that is math, right? So we're not doing math because we want to play with the numbers, right? God is a God of order. And therefore, we learn how to order things through math. There is structure, and there is right and wrong, and there are truths, and there are non-truths. And math gives us that very clear picture. Even though our world would like to say, 2 + 2 can be 6, it actually cannot. There is a right and a wrong, and math gives us that gift. So in Christian education, we're not just looking at giving our kids tools for reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're saying, God created his creation and us in this way, and these are some methods that we can use to practice and look back at who our creator is.
Yes. Austin, anything you want to add to that on the Christian education part?
As an adult, sometimes it's hard to carve out time to start your day in the Word and in prayer. And one thing I think is really unique about RCA versus public education is we start every day in the Word and prayer. And we're teaching our kids from kindergarten, preschool on to hide the Word in their hearts. So our kids can memorize and recite whole Psalms before most kids can read, which I think is really special. It's fun, and it's a good way to start that habit at a time when you're forming lifelong habits.
Yes.
Because I have a hard time carving out time to read and journal. I actually have to be in men's groups, so I have people to keep me accountable to do so.
Yeah.
So my son's all over it without that.
Yeah.
So my son actually goes to RCA, and it's super sweet. Justin Cabot was teaching downstairs, and he said the story a little different than it was told to him at school, and he was all over it when we got in the car after church. And I was like, yeah, right on. He's got it memorized. All right.
But having that discipline and starting it early is really so important, because it's those lifelong habits that carry through, and starting it as early as possible is such a great thing. So let's talk a little bit about classical education too, because it's a term that I feel like has gotten more and more popular
For sure.
In the homeschooling and private schooling environment. But what exactly is classical education and what are the components of it?
So classical education is what used to be known as the liberal arts education. And so it is teaching the 7 liberal arts, but it's not just teaching that content. So there's a content curriculum component to it, but it's also teaching in the way in which a child develops. So Dorothy Sayers' The Lost Tools of Learning goes through the different stages at which a child develops. So you have like your polyparroting stage, which is your younger years, your 3 to 4-year-olds. They will parrot what you say. You say something, they say it back. Parents always talk about funny stories where they're out in public and all of a sudden their 3-year-old or their 4-year-old said whatever they said at home and they didn't actually want that said in public. Well, that's the parroting stage. That's what they do. They see and they mimic. And then they get into what we call the grammar phase. And the grammar phase is one of the longer phases of childhood. So that's more of like our kindergarten through 5th grade and the early stages of 6th grade. So we actually incorporated RCA 6th grade into our grammar stage. Some schools will move the 6th graders into the logic phase. But that's the beauty of classical education, is because when you're teaching in those phases of learning, not just content, you're meeting the child where they're at. And so you're asking things of them that their brain is ready to receive. So that is absolutely one of the things that separates us from a traditional Christian education. In the classical Christian education, we're meeting the kids in their development stages. So we're not asking our 2nd graders to do multiplication, because could they do it? Sure. Is their brain ready to receive, retain, master, and carry that forward in the way that which multiplication is designed to be used? No. They are able to process and be able to retain and master basic arithmetic with addition and subtraction. And when you meet them where they're at, when they get to that logic stage or that later grammar phase and they're using multiplication, they then can use that to manipulate, to work bigger problems and those kinds of things. So we're not asking things of kids before they're ready, and then we're not pushing them too far. So they tell you when they're ready for those next logical phases. So in the grammar phase, we're giving a lot of what I call the peg. So if you have a pegboard like you would see in a workshop and you have all of those holes that need to be filled, during those foundational grammar years, we're putting in those pegs. So we're learning and memorizing, just like Austin was talking about. Our kids can memorize exponential amounts of information that, unfortunately, our society has said, oh, that's way too hard for kids. They can't memorize. Well, we prove that wrong every day. Our kindergartners at our Christmas program coming up on the 18th will be reciting an 88-line poem, and they've been doing it for over a month, and they've got it dialed and down, and they have a blast doing it. You'll hear a lot about classical education as it's just rote in that kids don't enjoy it. Well, how many times have you read your kid a book and they're like, can you read that to me again? Let's watch that movie again. Can we read the book again? They love it over and over and over again. You throw your kid in the air. Well, do it again, Daddy, do it again. They want to do things over and over again. We as adults find that boring. So then we project that onto kids. But actually in that grammar stage, that's what they do really well, and they retain it and they enjoy it and they love it. So now they have then in that grammar stage developed a love for learning and understanding and mastering material. And then they move on into the logic phase, which is the middle school years. So for RCA, that's 7th and 8th grade. We do some introduction to logic type of curriculum in our 6th grade, but we really focus on that in our 7th and 8th grade. That's where they're asking why. This is why do we do this? Why do we do that? I don't understand this. Explain this. So, which is usually the parents' pretty frustrating stage, because they're like, that's just what we do, but they want to know, they want to understand the workings of it. So then you have all of these pegs that you've put up on the pegboard during those grammar phases. Then you get into the logic phase, and they're asking those why questions. So now they're taking those pegs, and they're able to start putting pictures together and understanding full stories. And then you get into the rhetoric phase, which is the high school years, where they're actually able to take that information where they have said, okay, here's our facts. These are our foundational pegs that we have. Now we have our logic, which we understand the why of these foundational pegs. And now I'm going to be able to say that back to you. I'm going to be able to teach you about it. It's the rhetoric phase. So the learning to read and write and speak really well. And so their communication skills are developed during those high school years where they can then go out into the workforce or into parenthood, adulthood, whatever the Lord has for them. And they're able to take that information and apply it to all of these other areas of life because they have gone through the stages of learning. They can now implement that in anything that they want to do. And so that is the beauty of a classical education. We're not pigeonholing kids into a big thing that is popular in education right now is saying, I want them to have a STEM education, or I want them to have this project-based learning or activity. Everybody's raving about hands-on, and we believe in whole body learning. So contrary to what some of the rumors are out there about RCA, our kids are up and moving and interacting all day long. We believe in whole body education and incorporating our body and movement into what we're learning. But in our culture and society right now, in the education movement and progressive education, is that they really are looking for basically pigeonholing kids into STEM learning environments, which are there some great things in STEM? You betcha. But the beauty of a classical education is that they could step into any environment, whether that's a STEM environment, a liberal arts environment, if that's a technology environment, whatever that may be, they will then have the tools to learn, because in every new thing that you learn, no matter what your age is, you will go through a grammar, a logic, and rhetoric phase. So we have done that. We've met them where they're developing at, but we've also given them tools to learn for the rest of their life.
Yes, and that learning for the rest of their life is so important, that education doesn't just stop once you graduate high school or graduate college, that it is that lifelong process, and then giving kids the ability and the skills necessary to continue to do that and to continue to love it.
Absolutely.
Is so important. I know, I can't remember the numbers right now, but you guys posted on Instagram maybe a month ago or so, but test results
Yes.
and comparing it to other results from other different, like I think it was public school. I may be wrong, but I think that was the graph. But talk a little bit about that, how this style of education obviously teaches character. Obviously, it's working on good, godly disciplines and the whole process of learning, but it also translates into academic excellence on standardized testing.
Absolutely. So we actually debated quite a bit if we even wanted to do standardized testing. If you look into and research a little bit about what's going on with the PSAT and SAT, they've actually rewritten it, and they've rewritten it twice now. 3 years ago, they rewrote it, and they've actually dumbed it down significantly because students were no longer able to reach the scores at which colleges were looking for admitting students. And so it got rewritten. So we were like, well, if they're already rewriting the standards, why would we bother taking any of their tests? Because our goal is not to meet the standards, it is to exceed it. I believe that we serve a God of excellence, and therefore we have a program of excellence, and that's what we put all of our efforts into, helping our kids build habits to strive to be excellent. And so why would we then test them on something that has already been said? We're not looking for excellence, we're looking to make it easy for you. So we debated a long time if we wanted to do that or not. Then we learned about the classical learning test, which actually is exponentially harder than the SAT and the PSAT. And so they are partnering with colleges all over the country and making some pretty good headway. And that's a system that we could get behind. And of course, we get asked all the time, how do your kids perform compared to XYZ, right? Whether that's public or private or whatever. So we're only going into our year 3, and we're like, well, let's get a benchmark. Let's see where we're at. And we expect that these test scores will continue to grow as we've had more time to work with these students. Like I said, we're only going into our year 3, so we've really only had 2 years of really pouring in and developing and doing a lot of groundwork with these kiddos. But we were so incredibly proud that our very first test that we scored in the top 30% of the nation on the CLT learning test. And so a lot of your your advanced students in public schools, they will use the same type of systems to help measure like books and math and those types of things that CLT learns, but those are only in your advanced classes. And so we were able to also take those CLT scores and then look back and see exactly where they're performing in those specific categories, and then compare those to our local public schools. And we were blowing them out of water between 20 and 50% higher test scores in those. So we're really, really proud of what our kids have accomplished in just a short time, and we look forward to seeing them continue to do better.
That's amazing. Well, let's give you a break for a second. I want to talk to the board member here. And I just kind of want to get a board member's perspective, and kind of from the board's perspective of what's the dream, what's the vision, where are we going with RCA, and kind of obviously you can't share everything, but kind of just a big picture of the vision for where the board wants to take RCA.
A little caveat is I'm the newest board member,
Okay.
so I've only been on the board for 2 months, but Danny York is actually related to me, so I've had lots of conversations about RCA, and so I can speak with some authority.
Yes.
For me, what I was most excited about RCA is just the potential to create a whole new education system for our kids. One thing that I'm really excited about in the high school, we're talking about electives. We can't really compete with like Grants Pass High School, let's say, for auto shop and French. We're not going to have those things, but we were talking about, well, maybe French. If a listener out there knows French and wants to come teach, we'd love to have you. But we're going to have investing classes. We're going to have banking professionals come and talk. We're going to really prepare our kids for adulthood. So RCA is hard. Yes, it's not easy. We have hard academic rigors. We have discipline in that you have to have good study habits. But those are things that are setting you up for life. When I went to college, I had horrible study habits. My sister, Morgan, has always had fantastic discipline, even as a child. She couldn't go to bed without brushing her teeth. So when she got to college, she was fantastic. She's super bright and had great study habits, so she just knocked it out of the park. I am a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. So when I was in high school, I would just sleep and then get just good enough grades on the test to like skate in with a B, maybe a low A. My mom wouldn't be too mad. So RCA we don't allow skating by, and that's okay. Hard is good. Working hard is good, and working hard when you're young is important. It's really important to learn those skills really as early as possible. A lot of people, I'm in the workforce. I was in the Carpenters Union for 5 years. I've been in the trades now for a long time, and a lot of young guys that I worked with, they were terrible workers. Not all, but a lot. Like a lot of the old guys would make fun of the young guys because they're like, these guys, they just have no drive. They've got no discipline. They've never done this before. They're scared of hard. Like when I first got in the trade, I had to dig a 12-foot by 6-foot by 6-foot hole in the clay with a shovel. And I was like, man, this is a bummer. But, in those experiences, I learned, wow, framing's pretty easy when you're not digging a giant hole. So that's what I hope for our kids is, yeah, it was difficult, but they had a great time. I mean, our kids are smiling all the time. Everybody's super happy, in my opinion. I go on campus pretty regularly, and I was actually at lunch yesterday, and they're just so nice. We have a great atmosphere. All the kids are just smiling. I love the uniforms. I think some people would pick on the uniforms, but they create a nice equality. There's no fashion show at our school, which really helps because some kids come from families with money. Some come from families without money. And at RCA, everybody's equal. We're all just here to love the Lord and to learn. So I really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yes. And you said earlier that your son goes to RCA. So what was that, I guess, were there any additional insights you got into from going as a parent to a board member, and kind of like the big picture things you learned having had a kid in the school and then becoming a board member?
Well, I learned that the leadership and volunteers at RCA work ridiculously hard for a lot of hours every day. It is absolutely insane, the amount of people just pouring their lives into this thing. I mean, Constance is amazing. Catlett is our, what's her title?
Head of Instruction and Academics.
Yeah, she's amazing. And then Brett Anderson is our Dean of Students. He is just absolutely fantastic. And there's tons of volunteers who, if I spent time listing them, we would have to end the podcast when I was done. So, but that jump, as a parent, I was just dropping my son off last year. Well, to be fair, my wife was. I did not come. She's awesome. But now that I've been involved, it is just so fun to see who God has called to just get behind this thing and really grow it. As far as my son, he's a first grader, and I actually grew up going to private school until 8th grade, and then I jumped into public school, and that was not a positive experience for me. So I was always pretty dead set on either private school or homeschool. And my son is a social person. I don't think he would do super well in homeschool. I actually homeschooled for half a year and hated every minute of it. I was stuck with my sisters and my mom, who I love, but I've got to talk to at least 20 people in a day to feel successful. And I could not do that there. I had to wait until my buddy Chris Hamblin would get home. He lived on the same dirt road. I'd be like, 20 minutes till Chris. Yes. And go talk to somebody that's not related to me.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about staff at RCA, because obviously you're not just hiring people who can teach, but you're hiring people with a heart to continue and to further the mission. So when you are hiring and building your staff, what are the types of people that you are looking for being teachers and working with the kids?
So the number one criteria that we're looking for is a heart for the Lord, which looks a lot like servant leadership always. So not just in the workforce and out with what we are doing at RCA. Are they a leader in their own home, walking with the Lord? If they're parents, are they leading their kids? So yes, we want them to be able to academically excel and help our students reach that excellent bar that we have set at RCA. But most importantly, we want them to have a heart for the Lord where they are forming the heart of the student. Proverbs says that a man will become like his teacher. So if we were just set on credentials and making sure that they have checked all of the state boxes saying that they can teach kids, we would miss really good opportunity, and we would miss the calling that God has on RCA, which is to raise up this next generation of Jesus followers. And that looks a lot like looking at the heart of the person that's teaching, and are they directing the students to the Lord in everything they're doing. So that's the number one thing that we look at is, are you leading a life already that is a servant to the kingdom? And are you then able to lead this next generation in that same way? And are you academically excelling yourself? So that is, it's a 1+1 on that one. So we want them to be excellently striving in their own education, just like we were talking about being a lifelong learner. Yes. Are you still learning? Are you still growing? Because if you're not still learning and growing, how then could you ask someone else to learn and grow? You can't. So we have the most amazing staff members I have ever had the pleasure of being around. They are absolute gifts from the Lord, and they meet both of those things. They have very high academic standards for themselves, and they are all walking closely with the Lord, which is a real gift.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed from y'all's Instagram is that there is a very big emphasis placed on community and really having a active community life. So let's talk a little bit about that for maybe someone who hasn't seen the RCA Instagram or Facebook or any of kind of the social media postings. What does community life at RCA look like?
Yeah, so it's interesting you bring that up. I was just on the phone with one of our grant writers yesterday, and she was saying, where are you at with volunteers? And, how are you conveying to other people how you're able to keep your costs so low? As anybody who's ever looked into private education, it's very expensive. But when you look at RCA, we are exponentially less expensive than, yes, people in our area, but nationwide, we are probably some of the lowest in cost. The way we do that is because we have a really, really amazing community. We have very low overhead as far as numbers of people that are on staff versus numbers of kids that we are serving. So if you look at most schools, you will see 5 to 6 people operating in the office. We have 2. But we have an army of volunteers. On any given month, we have over 60 people who say yes and step in and serve at RCA. But that being said, we serve over 200 students. And so 60 people, coming in, serving for a half hour or serving for an hour is amazing, but we're always looking for more. Yeah. So if you know somebody, or if you're listening and you're interested in getting plugged in the community, please come on down. We would love to have you. Everybody has gifts and talents. And so putting those gifts and talents to use where God has gifted those people. We just had somebody come in this week who she comes in and reads for 15 minutes, and it's a huge blessing. So it's a blessing, yes, to the volunteer, because anytime we're serving, we're always more blessed than the people that we're serving. But it also, so the volunteers are blessed, but our students, it was really sweet. One of the classes are like, is our reading friend going to get to come today? So they look forward to it just as much as the volunteers do. And it's when you're there on the campus, it's not just, hey, I'm here to serve and I leave. It's you get greeted by Mrs. Hill, who is our office manager, who is pure joy and loves people so deeply. And then you walk into these amazing staff members that I was just talking about, the teachers, and then the other volunteers that are there. And then you have these joyful students who love life and are happy and are working hard. And I don't know if you've been around kids lately, but a lot of times when you're around kids, it's chaos. And that's not always the best environment for all people, and it's not chaos. And so we get a lot of comments from our volunteers that they love that they can come in and just enjoy the kids and not feel stressed out about chaos. They get to just be there and enjoy them. So it is a really sweet community of staff and volunteers. And
plus, you don't have kids glued to cell phones or screens.
This is true.
That is so often that you run into that as well. Yeah. Obviously, I know the answer to this, but for someone who doesn't, what's that vetting process look like for volunteers? And like the sense of confidence that parents can have that it's there's a safety net of processes that happen before you are allowed access to children and around the children.
Yes, there is. So the way that looks is that there is a volunteer inquiry on our website. And then from that inquiry, you get a phone call from actually one of our volunteers who she teaches a class and volunteers to help with our volunteers. She is absolutely amazing and pure joy. So she calls and Ms. Cupcake, and she will find out, what are your interests? Because we don't want our volunteers serving where they're not loving to serve. And so we find out what is a good fit and what the schedule looks like. And maybe after that conversation, it's not a good fit because it's not for everybody. Or maybe there's a very specific niche and that's right where you need to be. And that's right where we have a hole. And so that next step then goes to a background check. And once we get the background check in, then there's orientation so that when our volunteers come onto campus, they're not feeling like, I don't know what to do or where am I supposed to be? They feel confident that they can come in and do what they need to do. And so there's orientation, get to hang out with Mrs. Hill for a little bit. And then from there, then there's put onto the schedule, and it can be a rotating schedule or a one-time thing, depending on we have people who run our events, or people who come and clean our windows, or people who serve every single day in the classroom. So there's different levels and different spaces that people volunteer, and so then from there it's continual follow-up with Mrs. Cupcake, Mr. Anderson, myself, Mr. Brumbach. So from there, it continues to grow. And that communication then, especially in our security team, is where we see the sweetest volunteer connection. They are actually having a potluck dinner. I think it's next week or maybe this week. I should probably know that. But they're having a volunteer just potluck because they all love each other and they get to serve together. And there is something about when the body of Christ says yes to community and serving alongside one another, the bond there is just really rich and good. So you're right, it is a community, and that getting plugged in and keeping our kids safe is very important. And so it's not just this like, hey, we don't know this person at all, and now they're hanging out with your kid all day. We're spending time to get to know them before they're with a kid. And it's never a one-on-one with a kid. It's always in community.
And our security guards are everywhere, so that always makes me feel good. There's no open space that isn't watched at RCA. We have cameras everywhere. Adults use separate bathrooms, which as a parent, you're like, hey, where's that volunteer going? They have their own bathroom that kids don't have access to. That's locked. There's no room that isn't unoccupied at RCA. So there's a lot of great safety things that make me as a parent feel super comfortable.
Yeah.
One is the security team, especially. I just love those guys. They're so sweet. They know every kid's name and their presence.
Yes.
That's nice to have. It's a huge blessing.
Yes. And you mentioned a reader that comes in for like 15 minutes and reads. So it sounds like someone who wants to volunteer and maybe doesn't have an hour to commit or a couple hours to commit, there's still opportunity for them.
Absolutely.
So what are the needs right now in terms of if someone's listening to this and they're like, where can I fit in? Are there any specific needs that RCA has that people should be aware of?
Yes, we are always looking for more people to be at lunch and recess. Which also, I think, for volunteers feels intimidating. Like, what is that going to be? Am I going to have a whole group of kids? Teachers and staff are actually at lunch and recess with our kids every day. We enjoy getting to build relationship with our students outside of the classroom. Like Austin was saying, we ask a lot of our kids in academic rigor and in the classroom. So when we get to lunch and recess, we get to let our hair down a little bit and have some fun and have more of that one-on-one connection with the students. And so as far as on a personal level outside of the academic world. So teachers and staff are there. We're always looking for adults that want to pour in and get to know kids and have a meal with them. During our lunch, we talk about gratitude and what we're thankful for. So sharing in those conversations and being able to go outside. Pastor Matt was just there yesterday racing our kindergartners up and down the pavement, and just stuff like that means the world to kids, and it's 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah. And thinking of specifically to because obviously it is a nonprofit and the fundraising, donation gathering, donation part of this, what kind of needs are there in terms of maybe someone has a specific gifting that they can help raise money, or they have money they want to donate? What are the kind of the needs in that financial department?
Well, when you're a nonprofit, you always need to raise funds, especially with our goal of keeping tuition affordable in the Rogue Valley, because we are an impoverished community. So any donations towards a scholarship fund is amazing, super helpful to allow kids that otherwise couldn't come to RCA to come. We're also always trying to upgrade the facility. It was built in 1960s. It was actually a Seventh-day Adventist school in the 60s, and we have a lot of the original doors and windows. So we're always trying to change those things out. Edgewater has been crazy generous and has helped us with a lot of those. So last year, our preschool room, the heater was too small, and the windows you didn't actually seal. So those poor kids were like in their coats all day, and we replaced those windows, but we could continue to replace windows. And then as we grow, we'd like to build another room. So we're actually going to start a development team to go out and raise funds to build 2 more classrooms, because that would be what we'd need to kind of fill out the school so we could go through 12 grades. Is in the future we'd need 2 more rooms, so we're working on that. And an outdoor play area someday would be super fun, just so when it's raining, kids could still be outside and getting that fresh air, because when you go and shove them in a loud, sweaty gym, they're not getting the sunshine, they're not getting the fresh air, and it is rigorous. So they really need the break of sunshine and air and running around and being a kid. And we have a great, we had a bunch of people donate, and we built a really cool new playground this year that's really fun. And we got a grant and built a pickleball court. Jimmy Brown came and poured that for us. Brown Bear Masonry, he's amazing. Thank you. And so really any of the facility stuff is always a huge need. And if you want to come and help clean, we do cleaning parties in the spring and the fall before school. So that's an easy kind of one-shot volunteer opportunity that's always there. I mean, Juan comes and is our janitor, and he's one dude and he cleans a whole school. He's amazing. So any of those things,
Right.
really. Yeah.
So lots of opportunities for wherever people could see themselves fitting in. Lots of opportunities to help raise up that next generation. Before we get to the gala coming up in February, I want to talk a little bit about, because I know you mentioned cross country, And you mentioned, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's a wrestling, I don't know if elective is the right word, but a wrestling class. How has the reception to that been for students and for parents and for people in the community?
So I'm also a mom of 3 boys. So sports are a big part of my family culture, and I've always loved sports. But as a piece of RCA, I did not see that being a focus. Sports are everywhere. As families, if you live in a district of a school, you can go and play sports wherever you're at. So it's not ever been a main focus of RCA, but our kids wanted it. And so trying to meet the needs of our community, which has been the goal from day one, is to serve our community. And sports is one of those things that they were looking for. So we said yes to it. And it has been the absolute best blessing I did not see coming. And yes, I love sports and they're fun, right? There's all of the great things of teamwork and hard work, and the physicality of sports is great. But what I didn't see coming is the camaraderie and the gift that it gives back to the classroom of them. Because when you're in the classroom, you're doing a lot of hard individual disciplined work for yourself, right? But when you are doing sports, you're doing that for the person next to you. And then you're having to link arms with that person in a different way. And maybe in the classroom, you find that person really annoying. But then you're out on the court or you're on the field, and now you got to link up. And that linking up outside of class and being able to pour that back into the classroom has been a real gift to our students. And so we added this year, so we had cross country, volleyball, basketball, and wrestling has just got kicked off. And we're actually in a collective with Grants Pass High for our boys high school wrestling. And so that's been a real gift too, because now our kids get to go over into Grants Pass High and they get to wrestle with those kids, but then they get to go out and individually compete. So back to being a part of our community, I think what happens a lot of times is when you have a private school and a public school, like for some reason, our culture says you have to land in one camp or the other. But it turns out that like we're all still part of the same community. Mm-hmm. And so it's been really sweet to be able to partner with Grants Pass in some of these areas and some of these things. And they've welcomed us in with open arms. And we have a really amazing coach who was a D1 wrestler that we're able to send over there that's also blessing their students. And so sports has been a good addition. We just started this year, and there's been a lot of blessings come from it.
That's wonderful. So as we kind of start to wrap things up here, I don't want to let you guys go without talking about the 4th annual gala coming up next year, Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby Gala. Tell me a little bit about what people can expect, how they can sign up, what that evening entails.
Yes. So the gala is our annual fundraiser, and I have got this question 3 times, so I'm going to answer it now. So hopefully if you have the same question, you'll understand. It is our 4th annual gala because we had our first gala before we ever opened our doors. So our first gala was July 2023, and we opened our doors in August 2023. So this will be our 4th annual gala, and we've learned over the years of things that work well for galas and things that don't. And I have to tell you, it's one of my favorite events that we do. It is so fun. We incorporated a theme last year, and I thought, are people really going to buy into this whole theme thing? I don't think that's necessary. They loved it. Everybody showed up on theme. And so this year we are having a Run for the Roses. So we're looking forward to seeing derby hats and what fun creative things our guests come up with. But it's another community event. So we have people like Brown Bear. We have different businesses in our community who've said, we want to get behind what you're doing. And their businesses sponsor tables and bring guests. And we have an amazing dinner that Sean Logue cooks for us. And then we have a dessert dash, which is one of my favorite things. It's a fun game where you get to bid, and whoever on the table has the highest, or whichever table has the highest bid for the dessert gets to go first. And it's not like, oh, you get to go and now it's your turn. it's rapid fire. So there's a race to see which dessert you get to win. So that's a really fun engagement. We have desserts and guest speaker. Chad Hansen's actually speaking for our gala this year, and pretty excited. He has been such a force in our community of rallying people together to better Josephine County. And I'm looking forward to hearing how, as a community, we can continue to grow and serve the people that are here. So very excited about that. There's dessert, there's an auction. We always have amazing auction items. As a matter of fact, last year, there were so many auction items that our number one feedback from our guests was, there was so much I didn't know what to bid on. So that's also just another window of how much our community has been in support of RCA. So that's been really fun to have not just the people who have kids or who are volunteering. There's actual businesses out in the community that are contributing in that way, and the gala is one of the ways that they do that. So it's a really fun community event. There's usually 250 people there. We're hoping that this year that it grows. So if you want to join us for that event, it's on February 28th. You can sign up on our website, or if you're a business and you're a table sponsor, you can sponsor a table. Or if you are interested in just learning more about the committee and the people that put that on, you can email fundraising@roguechristianacademy.org.
And I'm assuming there's probably also volunteer opportunities. So if someone wants to help with that specific event, they can do that?
Absolutely, yes. So we actually have an events team that we have the gala, but we also have all kinds of things throughout the year. We had our inaugural fall festival this year. We have different things like our Christmas program. So that team does a lot. So if you wanted to be a part of that team, that's an opportunity. But also that night of the event, there are tons of things like running the silent auction tables, and then the auctioneer who's running the live auctions, always needing stuff moved around. We actually have our kids come and serve. So this is one of the ways that our staff and our kids can serve back to the community that's being so generous to us. So they serve the tables, they help set things up and tear things down. We're actually having the gala this year here at Edgewater, which is amazing. So one of the biggest areas of needs that we have is going to be moving chairs and tables before and after the event. So if you can lift a chair and you want to help, we would love to have you.
Okay, and they can obviously go to the website or email somebody
Yes.
to get connected. Awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you joining me today. Any final thoughts before I ask Austin to close our episode in prayer? Anything we've missed that you want to cover or make sure people know about?
I would say the one last thing that we consistently get feedback and hear from our community is, yeah, but isn't RCA just so hard? It's just too hard. Our kids should just get to be kids. And we've talked a little bit about this, but I would just encourage parents and community members to remember that hard is not bad. And there's actually a real gift that we're able to give this next generation of asking them to do things that are bigger than themselves and able to give them opportunity to lean on God when they think that they can't, and to watch him show up in their life and watch them overcome obstacles and do hard things because they are in an environment that says, you think you can't do this, but let's ask the Lord and he can do this with you. And when we put our kids in an environment where they're being pointed back to the Lord and they can see that they can overcome and do really hard things, they will be the next generation that is able to shape the culture for his kingdom.
Yes. Austin, would you close us in prayer?
Yep. Father, thank you for this day, and we are just so thankful for this work that you've done called RCA. We're so thankful for Edgewater and the members of this community that have been pouring into RCA and the future generation that we're leading up. And we just lift up all the kids in not just RCA, but the Rogue Valley and the world, that they are chasing after you, and that we are giving them the best possible opportunity to learn about you and to model for them how to be a real Christian, Lord, to walk after you. And we just thank you for this and everything you've given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening to Jesus is the Deep End. If you'd like to connect, ask questions, or share feedback, we welcome your comments at jesusisthedeepend@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at JesusIsTheDeepEnd. To learn more about Edgewater Christian Fellowship in Grants Pass, please visit edgewaterfellowship.org. Until next time, our prayer is that you encounter God in praise, prayer, preaching, and community, that He transforms the world through you.